Hi, everybody. Welcome to Starfleet Boy, and today we're going to discuss the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Where No One Has Gone Before. This will be, as usual, a casual and informal discussion. And today we have the return of the Doctor. He comes back with us. Doctor?
Yes, hello.
And you're broadcasting from where?
I am broadcasting from the Serendipity Saloon in the Milky Way Malt Shop.
Very nice, very nice. Good to have you back on the program. And also, we're patching into Tarak Noor right now, and we have Goldu Scott on as well.
Goldu Scott here, live from Tarak Noor. Good to see you all.
Whoa, you guys! Did you guys upgrade something over there? You sound a lot better.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we got our comm systems upgraded, and we also increased our subspace communications bandwidth.
Oh.
So that should help as well.
You look very clear. I can see you really well.
You look very clear and very handsome as well too, Starfleet Boy.
Thank you. Anyways, of course, I'm broadcasting from Starfleet headquarters, my cozy little apartment here in what's my loft at Starfleet headquarters. So today's episode we're going to talk about is Where No One Has Gone Before. And before I get into that, I think that's an important distinction. I don't know if we spoke about this before, but the previous introduction to Star Trek until The Next Generation came on was Space, the Final Frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise on its 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. And that was the case all the way up until Star Trek The Next Generation, where they changed two things. They said, instead of on its 5-year mission, they said on its continuing voyage to explore strange new worlds, new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before. And I thought that was such an important change, because it was a lot more inclusive, not just man in the sense of humanity, but people of all different kinds of species and so on. So that's kind of cool. And this also mirrors the title of a original series episode called Where No Man Has Gone Before, where something extraordinary happens. So we could already expect that something extraordinary might happen in this episode.
It's also based on a novel. I don't know if you knew this.
No.
A Star Trek novel, The Wounded Sky, which is right now I completely forgot who the author is. Oh well, she's one of the people credited with writing the story. Her credits are in the episode.
Oh, okay.
The original novel was it was for the original series. And she set out to write, in her own words, the best Star Trek novel ever written. And it's the same premise. It's but instead of the traveler, the person who takes them into this other dimension where thought and all is affecting reality. It's a spider-like alien engineer.
Interesting.
And, it's one of those early '80s Star Trek novels where the imagination is really unbound. They kind of settle into more TV series like stories, but those early Star Trek novels were really out there. And The Wounded Sky is really if you like the episode, it's worth reading that one.
That's awesome.
And the writer that you mentioned, who wrote the original book and then adapted it for the screenplay, was Diane Duane.
Right, that's her. Yes.
I love this this collaborative thing going on here. Everyone has a little bit of information. That's pretty awesome.
Well, yeah. So Starfleet Boy, I was just going to mention, what got me excited about this episode was I had forgotten which one this was, and you mentioned beforehand, before I watched it, that this was the Traveler episode. So I got very excited for a big, monumentous Wesley episode. And as it turns out, Wesley doesn't really have that much to do, even though it is an important episode for him. He's not really a central character. He just feels like he's kind of there.
They're setting Wesley up in this episode for something really big, and they really kind of solidify the idea that he is an extraordinarily intelligent person that may have some kind of larger destiny ahead of him. We'll get into that, but let me give a real quick little synopsis, sort of. So as the Doctor already kind of stated, it does parallel the plot of the novel. What happens is, the episode starts out pretty routine. The Enterprise is rendezvousing with a ship where they're about to receive a warp engines expert named Kaczynski. And who's doing that? Shut off that damn noise!
I think it might be me, and I'm gonna try to figure this out here. All right. Am I still on the call?
So, anyways, the Kaczynski comes aboard with an assistant who's kind of an enigmatic figure. They don't really even name him. He just kind of says, "This is my assistant," and he's an interesting-looking alien. They did a great job at the makeup design, I thought, for this character. So Riker has his qualms about it, and he's kind of like, the Enterprise engines are brand new. Why do we need them to be calibrated? And I think it's funny how Riker seems to be the voice of reason.
Well, it was a weird.
It reminded me of in the old show when they were going to hook up that computer that was going to take over the Enterprise, and Kirk, why do we need that? Riker is pulling a Kirk there. I thought that was funny. That was cool.
That's true.
And it's also weird that they're having that conversation right there. Like, you would have thought they would have talked about this earlier. Like, it seems to be a surprise to Picard that the data is all gibberish and they're all matter-of-fact about it. Like, yeah, Captain, none of it made any sense. And he doesn't seem to care. He's just like, whatever, you guys. I trust Starfleet.
I think he asks, is there any harm in Kaczynski's equations, and Geordi or someone responds, no, actually, they're kind of like, that guy's just going to be like, nothing's really going to happen. They're like, well, this is kind of a formality of some kind. Maybe Kaczynski's sleeping with an admiral or something, and
oh, scandal.
A little bit of Starfleet politics here. So Picard might be privy to that, and he's taking the more he's like, I know you guys don't understand this, but sometimes we have to do these stupid like posturing type things and let these experts on board and so on and so forth. And I can imagine, because Kaczynski's kind of a charlatan, although he seems to believe that what he's doing is correct, and he does. And apparently there is some success that's been occurring, because the previous ship, the warp engine efficiency was increased by a certain percentage. So there is something to his madness, if you will. But
yeah, they say it's worked twice before, right, on 2 other ships.
Yeah, he's already helped out with the propulsion calibration. So anyways, but you're absolutely right. It's kind of like matter of fact, and Riker seems the most concerned.
You just thought there would have been a meeting or some sort of briefing about this earlier, where Data would have brought up his analysis of it beforehand. That's all I'm saying. Just a little bit of lazy writing. They're like, we have to fit these kind of 2 conversations into this one opening scene, and let's just see how much shit we can get out of the way as fast as possible.
The Enterprise bridge has always kind of been a casual sort of place where they do talk about things like that you would think that they would need a briefing for. But I think you're right. This one probably did. It's a concern. It probably did deserve a briefing of some kind. maybe in the captain's ready room. Maybe not in the conference room, but maybe in the captain's ready room or something like that.
Yeah, that was definitely a ready room conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
So Kaczynski comes aboard, and now we meet. We go down to engineering, which is going to play a big part in this episode. And strangely enough, now we have a new the engineer of the week.
They were kind of rotating at that point, weren't they?
Does this engineer even have a name? I forget.
I'm trying to look here through my notes. I didn't catch a name, and I watched it twice. But I was more just wondering why we weren't getting an explanation for what happened to McDougal.
Oh yeah, well McDougal obviously got fired because she let what happened before. I think Captain Picard's a pretty ruthless captain. She's probably been reassigned. We don't see it on screen, but he's probably like, McDougal, I'm sorry, but you are not going to work out.
But I feel like they could have worked it into this story, like this guy was nervous maybe about what happened to McDougal, and so he's trying that much harder not to screw up.
But of course he does, and so he's on the top block as well. Anyways, Kaczynski and the Traveler, they begin their experiment, and for some reason Wesley is I may have missed. Why is Wesley in engineering? Does anyone remember?
He's just hanging out, right?
He is just hanging out. It's kind of a strange. Well, we've already established the Enterprise is kind of the Enterprise D at least is very casual. There's a lot of civilians just running around in high security areas.
So Wesley doesn't go to school or anything? I mean, have we established that there's a school on the Enterprise at this point?
There is a school on the Enterprise, and we do see it later. But I think most of the students do self-study. I think in the future, people are way more disciplined about learning, and it's not quite as formal. Basically, it's probably like he reads a bunch of stuff, does a couple of tests, and then the computer passes him. The computer is like his teacher, and he can watch any lecture that's in the databank. He can watch lectures about, warp propulsion. He can go to. I bet every famous professor has been recorded somehow and is in the ship's computer bank. So I think education's a lot different. It's probably more like what some people envision with like where the internet is going in terms of education. So.
But they do have teachers though on the Enterprise. This isn't
Chief O'Brien's wife.
Keiko is a
teacher, but I think that at his level, I think Wesley has already passed like formal school. He's now he's now kind of just like, eventually he'll go to the academy, which is another formal schooling. But right now he's on self-study, is my impression.
Okay. Because on DS9, Cisco's kid Jake looks more or less like that age, and he was going to school. So on DS9.
I don't know how old Jake is. We'll have to look into that.
But they have an episode where they specifically establish the need for a school and talk about how it's set up, and so there was like a whole story behind that on the Enterprise. I guess it's just assumed that there is a school out there, along with the barber shop that you mentioned in an earlier episode, and then all those other things.
They're there, I promise you. So anyways, Wesley's there, and by the way, I think this is his most epic sweater. What do you think, Goldie Scott?
I have to totally agree with you. It is. I was going to bring that up at some point, of course.
Feel free to talk about it now or later. It's fine.
Yeah, well, I guess it's I mean, the color, would you call it salmon? Is that the color you would use?
Yeah.
Yes, I think that is a salmon sweater, actually.
Yes.
And it's got like I don't even know how to explain it. It's got just so much cool shit going on. I mean, just Google. People just need to watch it for themselves. Words can't do it justice.
Yeah, the sweater was quite epic. I thought it was like probably his best sweater yet.
I did discover an entire website dedicated to Wesley's sweaters.
Oh my God.
And it lists them, episode by episode. And I apologize. I should have written it down and given them a shout out here. I will do that for our next show. Try and find this thing again.
I have to see that website.
I think his sweater days are coming to an end though, because if I'm not mistaken, well, we'll talk more about that. But soon he'll don the rainbow, the rainbow colored ensign outfit, the rainbow collar.
Yeah, well, there's the rainbow sweater, and then after that, he's in the gray Starfleet uniform for a while.
Right. It's true.
Right.
So
But yeah, sweater season is really just season 1.
yeah, it's true. So Kaczynski starts his warp experiments, and there's a really touching scene between Wesley and the Traveler where Wesley's kind of looking at Kaczynski's equations with some amount of consternation, and the Traveler says, "Well, do you think this will work?" And Wesley's like, "No, I don't think so." And he's like, "Well, what would you do?" And Wesley starts punching in a bunch of equations, and all of a sudden the warp field kind of changes, and the Traveler looks really impressed. He's like, "Whoa, this kid knows what he's doing." And he's like, now it might have a chance of working. The Traveler is kind of impressed with Wesley and takes note of him. They begin the warp experiment, and at first everything seems fine, pretty routine, nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden the Traveler starts to do something interesting where he seems to merge with the computer and phase in and out of existence in an interesting looking wavy special effect. And then the Enterprise engines, which I love when they go into full gear, that like pulsing, boom, 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 whatever noise it makes. And
so the power thing? The power thing?
The power of the Enterprise. And so all of a sudden it catapults the Enterprise into an insane velocity, and they end up, the first time I think they end up 3 galaxies away in I think it's M33 or something like that.
Don't they say 2 million light years or something?
Yeah, I don't remember it's something like 2 million light years, but it's 3 galaxies away from our galaxy. Pretty cool. The galaxy, the spot they land in this galaxy looks pretty outrageous. It's like the birth of a star or some kind of nebula or something like that. And as cool as it is, the crew is immediately alarmed, of course, because I think Geordi calculates that it would take 300 years at warp 9 to get back to our galaxy. So, that
it's
would be
basically the premise of Voyager. This episode.
Yeah, sort of. How many? Well, they're only like what?
I looked it up. They were only 75 years away from home, so they were still in our galaxy, right? They were in the Delta Quadrant. I know, Doctor, you're a big fan of Voyager, right?
No.
Poor Voyager. When we get to that, it'll be interesting.
For us, who had to watch.
I'll probably be the only one doing the commentary.
I won't be joining you on those commentaries. So.
I'll join you for the Andy Dick episode.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that Andy Dick was.
Is that me?
I think that's you. I think you're the binging also.
You're the culprit.
That was me.
Those TARDIS controls are hard to figure out.
Noise.
So, do either of you guys understand any of the science-y shit they're talking about here with the warp stuff and the whatever they say they're doing?
So I happen to have a kind of understanding.
You have
Of course you do.
Warp technology.
So what? Basically, today the fastest we can go is somewhere like I think Mach 10 maybe. I'm not even sure. It's been a while since I've looked into it. But as far as Star Trek's concerned, the Enterprise travels at warp 1 is like 1 factor faster than light speed, and warp 9 is 9 factors faster than light speed. So when you're traveling at light speed, you're traveling pretty fast, but even still, what happens is, if anyone saw the movie Interstellar, what happens when you're traveling at light speed is the time slows down for you, but it goes on at the correct pace for everyone else, right? And so theoretical physicists have figured out that the only way to... So in other words, if you were traveling at light speed and you went to Alpha Centauri, which is, I think, 60 light years away, right? When you came back, it would take you 60... Like, it would take you not that long to get there at light speed. It would take you the time that it takes, I think, light to travel that far, which is maybe a few hours or days or something like that, you know? It's probably a few hours. It's probably even less than that. But when you came back to Earth, 60 years will have passed on Earth. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, but I'm just confused because I thought that what happened in Interstellar was he became a ghost in a bookcase.
So, okay, let's leave Interstellar out of it. But you get the point, is that, like, if you travel 60 light years at light speed and you come back, 60 years will have passed on Earth, but very little time will have passed for you, right?
Yes. Is that the theory of relativity? Is that
Yeah, it has to do with
Einstein?
theory of relativity. Again, I only have a peripheral, like, I've only got a casual knowledge of this stuff. We should have maybe Jeff Lieberman or some expert on a future episode to talk more about these things. But
Good idea.
But anyways, Jeff Lieberman's someone we know, but it could be anyone.
He's a science officer on the Farragut.
He is a science officer. It's true. He could be our science officer. Very cool. Anyways, so warp 1 would lessen that experience. So now you're closing that gap, and so that's why in Star Trek, when we're traveling to faraway places, we travel at these warp velocities, because what's actually happening is you're folding or warping space. So now, instead of traveling at the speed of light, you're traveling at a speed that's beyond the speed of light, because you're bringing space, 2 points in space, closer together. So now it only takes the Enterprise maybe an hour to go here and an hour to come back, and only an hour will have passed for everyone in time and space, because you're actually warping space rather than traveling through it. Does that make sense?
A little bit.
Okay, so the Traveler, he bonds with the computer, and then something happens and they go into these crazy velocities. So now they're 300 years at warp 9, which means that's an insane amount of space, because even in light years, that's probably like way bigger distance. Like if you were only traveling at light speed, it would probably take you maybe 800 years or 900 years to get back home. So you can imagine the distances they've traveled. And Captain Picard, goes down to investigate what's going on. And so then, oh, by the way, while this experiment's going on, Wesley does try to warn Commander Riker a couple of times as to what's...
As usual, Riker's a dick.
Yeah, right. Riker completely ignores Wesley.
Knocks him away. He's like, "Hey, get away! Later, Wesley, later."
So Kaczynski, comes up to the bridge to try to explain what's happened, and this is really funny because he's actually babbling incoherently. Like
he is. It's absolute bullshit.
It's absolute bullshit. Most times when they have what's called techno babble on Star Trek, I have an understanding. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm technical enough that I know what's going on. But this time Kaczynski's talking, and it's pretty laughable. He's like, the boson neutrality of the blah blah blah, and Picard even says, what is he saying? So yeah, Kaczynski kind of babbles about nonsense, and at the end of the day, he basically says, "Well, can you get us back?" And Kaczynski says yes. So they try the experiment. They try again, and this time the Traveler, starts phasing again. But this time, the velocity is off the charts.
It's ludicrous speed.
What's that?
Ludicrous speed from space lines.
They just went warp 5,000.
Right.
Something like that. The computer never registers past warp 1.1, which is interesting, but like the ship gets hurtled through the universe to what might be the edge of the universe, the point where the universe is expanding still, or whatever
that was.
Where they have bubbles.
The universe is expanding into.
Where they have giant bubbles.
Well, yeah, these like
11 o'clock.
Oh, there goes my ship's computer.
11 o'clock.
You have these like very strange. it's a very strange environment. It's very this is very hard science fiction here, I would say. What do you think?
You know, actually, I would argue when I rewatched it, and this is actually one of my favorite episodes of the first season. I've always loved this episode because I love that part of the universe where they land, where there's bubbles and things don't look like it's real and all that stuff. And I always, being a Doctor Who fan, I kind of interpreted it as it not even like they actually didn't travel in terms of space, but they actually broke into another dimension of the same space they were in, which is why the ship didn't register them really, because you said they didn't travel warp, they didn't exceed warp whatever, right?
1.1, or the ship didn't register more than 1.1.
But
who knows what the hell happened?
They actually do know where they are in terms of distance. They don't know where they are in terms of.
Do they know where they are in terms of distance? Oh, I didn't realize that.
They say in the episode that they are now 1 billion light years.
Okay.
From our galaxy, from home.
Well, I still think that they're far away, but they're also in another sort of dimension.
Yeah, that is suggested in the episode later when we talk to the Traveler, but it's definitely a place that's far out. No, no pun intended.
No one has gone there before.
No one has gone there before, and Data does say when Picard asks where he is, he's like, "Where none have gone before, Captain." It's like totally true. Where none have gone before is what it seems like. And so while the Enterprise is sitting here and they're trying to figure out how to get back, a couple things have happened. One, the Traveler's exhausted. He's in this kind of like state of exhaustion, and Dr. Crusher's trying to, treat him, but she doesn't really understand his physiology.
Are we just gonna ignore the fact that nobody saw him phasing in and out? Like they were all right there in the same room, and this has happened now on 2 other ships, and nobody saw him doing that there either.
Yeah, apparently it's suggested that he can somehow influence others, but Wesley might be immune to this influence.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought this was just going on, and that I didn't know Wesley was somehow seeing things that other people couldn't see.
Maybe not that they couldn't see, but it's kind of. I liken it to the perception filter in Doctor Who. You have to really look for it to see what's happening. You know what I mean? So Wesley. So there's an interesting bond that occurs very quickly between Wesley and the Traveler.
Yes, because of the love theme that begins playing every time they're together.
There are some strange suggestions in this episode that somewhat of a. I think that the what comes to mind is that organization NAMBLA.
Oh my god. Okay, this is going to be a long NAMBLA talk, isn't it?
No, I'm just kidding. Let's not go there. But anyways, it is a little strange, the relationship.
It's just weird. I was just saying weird music. You took it way farther than I was going.
It's gone before.
Yeah, I was just saying it's a weird musical choice. That's all.
You said romantic music.
It is. It was very romantic. Yeah. Yeah, the Doctor agrees with me. The Doctor knows a good love theme when he hears one.
Right.
Anyways, moving on. So Wesley, kind of explains what he witnessed, and but there's also some interesting things that have been happening on the Enterprise. For example, on the way to engineering, Picard, is on the turbolift, and when the doors open, all of a sudden he's about to step out into space. He's very strange experience. Worf sees.
That's a famous shot, by the way. I remember seeing that in the commercials for this episode, or the the Next Time On preview.
You're right. That was used on the commercials announcing the series.
Yes.
That's a money shot. That one. Yeah. That's one of. Yeah, you're right. I remember.
It's a great special effect. I mean, you have this door opening into space. It's pretty cool. And you have Worf suddenly sees his Klingon Targ pet from his childhood.
Now, this is the most character development we've gotten on Worf so far, right?
He actually is smiling, like he's beaming. He's beaming. His smile is really huge in this part. And then Tasha goes into this pretty dark hallucination, if you will, where she's back in the colony that she grew up on, being chased by a rape gang, which had been mentioned
every episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tasha wants to remind us of the rape gangs every chance she gets.
Oh, it's pretty traumatic.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Now, Worf has the vision of the Targ, and then later, actually, before she goes to the rape gang planet, she has the cat vision. Remember the Targ?
Right. There's a cat. Right.
A cat. Now, the people in the background, the other people on the bridge, seem to be completely oblivious to the Targ. It's only Tasha who notices it. Now, is this just bad directing, or are they implying that these visions only are seen by certain people at a given time?
There is another precedent later in the episode for that. So Tasha and Worf see the Targ, and no one else seems to see it. And later on, there's two crewmen who are running past Captain Picard, and they're like, "Captain, you have to help us." And he's like, "Why?" And he's like, "Don't you see what's chasing us?" And he doesn't see it.
Right, he doesn't see it at all.
He doesn't see it. So there is some kind of like random.
And then later Picard sees his mother, but Riker doesn't see her.
Grandma.
Right.
Yeah.
Grandmother. Yeah.
Oh, grandmother? I thought that was his mother. That was his grandmother?
I think Mamon is grandma.
Yes, it's grandma. Yeah. So then these.
Mame is, I think, mother.
I thought it was interesting that it's sort of random. Like some people see it. It's the.
It is random, for example,
people, but not by others.
Yeah.
Picard sees the fire at one point that guy sees later on, but so it's sort of give and take. It's like sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't.
And not only that, sometimes it's immersive and sometimes it's not. For example, the rape. Tasha goes back to the colony that she was living on as when she was younger. The man who's eating his dinner alone, which is kind of sad, he's playing in a quartet.
Right.
And then we have the ballerina girl. So there's all these like crazy things going on. Then of course we have this really touching scene where you see a moment of tenderness. You had alluded to it just a second ago, where Picard sees his grandmother. And she's sitting there, and she says, "I made your tea very strong, just the way you like it." And she starts explaining where they are a little bit. So she suggests, Picard's a little baffled because he says, "Well, I've always felt that you're near me, but I never realized you were." And she's able to speak to Picard in a way that only he would understand, and she seems very real. And she starts to explain to him that she's neither alive nor dead, and he asks her if she understands the mechanics of where they are, and just before she can explain, Riker interrupts, and then the vision of her is gone. But we do get the impression now, we start to understand that where we are is a place where thought and reality are interchanged. Thought becomes reality literally, like instantaneously, whereas that doesn't happen to us here. I don't just think about an orange juice and it appears in my hand, right? That would be awesome. That would be a great special effect.
I want to say Patrick Stewart in that scene with the grandmother character is excellent in that scene. I've always thought that the way he shifts from that cold Picard, like I'm the captain, and then the moment he sees her, it's like the humanity just pours out of it. It's like suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, look at Picard. He's actually
Tender, yeah.
Right, yes. And then when he snaps at Riker, I love that.
Yeah, he snaps right back to Captain. Just a minute, number one.
Yes. I love that. I love that scene.
It's very true. It's a very nice moment. It's a very nice.
That's his best scene in the series so far. Would you agree?
I would agree. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, I agree. Right.
You know, to use a current phrasing, it definitely was. There were a lot of feels.
Oh,
What does feels mean? I don't know. I'm not up with the current anything.
I'm not a fan of these Tumblr terminologies that you're using.
I don't even know what Tumblr is.
So the kids today are using this expression whenever they see something that evokes some kind of an emotional response. They call it the feels.
Okay, why? What's like? I don't get it.
Because
they lack vocabulary. That's why.
No. What did we called it emo. Oh my gosh, I feel so emo right now. Don't you remember that?
Maybe
Emo.
Maybe you did, but
Yeah, I feel like even emo was after my time. That's how old I am.
I guess I'm a man of many generations. I don't know. But Picard makes his way to engineering and just blatantly interrupts many people's fantasies.
that sounds wrong.
Can we talk about the fire guy, the guy who's behind the fire?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about him. That comes a little later, but yeah, go on.
I mean, he says 2 words, but he walks by the captain and just says yes, sir, or something. But in the way he says those 2 words, he might be the worst actor I've ever seen. And I tried to find some information on this guy. It actually took a lot of research because it turns out he was uncredited, which makes sense because he certainly did not deserve credit for that. His name was or is Dennis Matalone. It turns out he's primarily a stuntman, and he was the stunt coordinator on a lot of the later Star Trek shows as well. But he is most famous for doing a patriotic music video called "America We Stand as One," which was inspired by 9/11. And I guess he became some sort of patriotic music star.
Wow. But
he's a terrible actor. He should stick with that instead.
I'm sure he knows that his performance wasn't, Oscar winning, but I think it makes sense that they did that because it's kind of a dangerous scene. I mean, there's a real live fire happening, so you would need your top stunt person to be in that scene.
You think that was a live fire and not a fact? Because it didn't look that real to me.
Oh wow! I have to watch it again because it looked pretty real to me.
CG. Yeah, I think it was CG. It was.
No, it couldn't have been at the time.
Not CG, but optical.
Oh, it could have been an optical. Yeah, an optical fan. I don't know. It looked pretty good. It looked like he was actually fending off these flames. He looked like he was feeling the flames. It didn't.
The flames were more convincing than the acting.
Absolutely.
So we have, anyways, we get to, he's interrupting all these fantasies, and we get to speaking with, Picard conjectures that they're at the outer rim, as I said earlier, the outer rim of our universe. So it's like this theoretical point where if the universe is expanding, what is it expanding to, right? It's expanding into possibly this place, wherever this is.
Right.
Well, I think that explains the bubbles, Doctor, that you brought up. If you think of the universe as an ocean, then they're in the part that is like the foam, where the waves are crashing.
Oh, very nice.
Very poetic, right?
Yes.
That's very poetic. Well, Cardassians are known for their love of poetry.
They are.
We are.
Yes.
Yes. As well as our love of Bajoran servants. But don't tell my wife.
No comments. No comments.
Wow.
Spoilers for Deep Space Nine Season 6.
Oh boy.
So finally, Picard's solution, by the way, when he realizes that all these people are immersing in fantasies, is to put the ship into red alert. general red alert, and he goes into engineering, gets briefed on what's going on, and everything kind of is explained to him. And Dr. Crusher says that the Traveler's too tired, he's exhausted. I don't know if I can revive him. Wesley kind of explains what's been going on. So we move to sick bay, where Picard makes the decision to revive the Traveler and wake him up, even though he's beyond exhausted, apparently. And this is when we find out where we actually are, the properties of where we actually are. The Traveler explains that he's a traveler, and he doesn't have any specific destination that he goes to. He just kind of, whatever the Traveler is and wherever he's from, they've evolved to a point where they can seamlessly travel to any point, it seems, in time and space, and they can occupy corporeal existence or non-corporeal existence. And he explains to Picard that where they are, he explains to Picard that the nature of the universe is that thought is, in fact, real. Like, thought is a physical thing that can, they can actually, and here it's just enhanced to this point where whatever you think happens. And he describes...
Well, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but Wesley actually says that earlier in the episode when he's him and the Traveler are first working together, and he figures out how to make the lines on the screen go the right way or whatever he does there. But Wesley, I think, makes the statement that he always thought that space, time, and thought were all interconnected. And
Right.
The Traveler sort of is like, whoa, stop! Those thoughts are, you're too young to be having those thoughts. Like, like he was thinking about porn or something.
That's an important scene. I'm glad you talked about that, because he's at once excited, and then he also at the same time cautions Wesley to slow his roll, so to speak, and not worry about such things. He's like, he suggests that that's like a little too, it's a little premature to be thinking about those things. You're right. Anyway, so that's where they are. They're in this strange place. It's neither real nor unreal. It's neither space nor time. It's neither, it's somewhere else. And these are its properties. And so he gives them a solution. He describes himself as a lens, and he says that like he can kind of process thought like a lens, and then maybe he has a chance of getting us back if everyone kind of can focus on getting back home. And then he asks to speak to Captain Picard alone, and this is kind of like the scene where now they talk a little bit about Wesley, and the Traveler suggests that Wesley is the Mozart of physics, and ship propulsion, and all these kinds of things.
And sweaters.
And sweaters. And he recommends to the captain that Wesley not be told about his extraordinary gifts or abilities, but that he be encouraged to explore them or take them where he will. And so this kind of establishes, earlier, Golder Scott, you were wondering, is Wesley in fact the boy genius, or is he just, or what, what's going on? And this episode kind of establishes him as like a boy genius of such caliber that it's like he's kind of an evolved human. And the Traveler also suggests that that humans were not interesting to his race until now, and Wesley and a few others like him in the few other beings like him are what keeps him traveling. That's the destination that he's trying to go to, is to like maybe see these extraordinary people in their infancy of thought or of achievement, so to speak.
Yeah, he specifically says I'm seeking out people like him.
Yeah. And
does the Traveler doesn't die at the end of this, right? I mean, when he phases out at the end, he's just going home.
Well, one can only wonder. But anyways, so so after this, the Traveler tries once again, and there's a really another touching scene where Picard goes on to the shipwide communications, and he says, "Okay, we're going to try to get home. I need everyone to fully concentrate on your work, and also to send good energy or good thoughts to the Traveler who's trying to get us home."
Which makes Troy feel very, very happy.
The
Expression
well
is
acted,
priceless.
well acted too. She did show delight in her face. I
Yeah.
thought it was very genuine.
You would think she was eating chocolate at the moment, but
This is a PG-13 show, right? Not rated R. I'm not going to say what I'm thinking right now.
That's okay. It's PG-13. You're absolutely.
Okay.
But just like Star Trek, we can push the boundaries here and there. So as you just described, they warp back. It seems to be successful, and the Traveler, in this effort, phases out of existence completely. Oh, and there is, of course, the scene where Wesley holds his hand. I think that's what actually solidifies his ability to bring us home. And that
just the kindness from Wesley?
kindness from Wesley holding his hand. Yeah, it was like the last little bit. Traveler erases himself from existence, or rather, sorry, not erases himself, but just bleeps out of our known existence. And Picard, makes another announcement saying, "Oh, we've successfully gotten home, and the Traveler seems to have gone, and we wish him well wherever he is." And it's a really nice, and that's it. It's like a nice little bow on top of the episode. Very clean, very clean.
Well, so I have a question then. What was the Traveler actually doing? What when he was bouncing the ship across, the universe, was it just that Kaczynski's thoughts of trying to do that were so powerful that the Traveler was boosting them, and then that was happening? Because, I mean, if the Traveler just sort of willfully threw the Enterprise into that horrible place, then he's kind of an asshole, right? But they're not presenting him as a bad guy, or...
well, he does apologize. He does say that he made a mistake. So I don't think he meant to do that. I kind of interpreted it as possibly, he wasn't really focused as he should have been. Maybe in interacting with Wesley kind of threw him off because he wasn't, it was like, oh, wait, you understand what's going on? Oh, wait, I got to go do this now. And
That makes sense. He was distracted.
He was distracted. And
By Wesley's letter.
Yes, absolutely.
And I guess the other thing I would ask about would be, do you understand the nature of the relationship between the Traveler and Kaczynski? Because I wasn't clear on that. Was Kaczynski using him? Was he allowing himself to be used?
I think what happens is obviously this is not clearly established in the episode, but my understanding, what I gleaned from it, on the first question, the Traveler by himself has this ability to travel. His name says it all. He can go anywhere in space and time. He can do this by himself. He also has the ability to somehow influence or bond with mechanical things, right? So up until now, somehow he met Kaczynski and thought, I think the Traveler used him. The Traveler met Kaczynski and thought, oh, this guy wants to do these warp calibration things. I have this ability where I can kind of bond with mechanical things, and that's how the Traveler actually has been enhancing the warp functions of these other two ships, right? He's like, in the meantime, I get to explore what this Starfleet's all about. I get to travel from ship to ship with this guy, and he gets a little glimpse into humanity and life, and that's kind of like what the Traveler's intention is. When he gets on the Enterprise, I agree completely with the Doctor that he is now all of a sudden distracted. He meets Wesley, and it's a surprise to him, a pleasant surprise, because up until now he hasn't really met anyone extraordinary. I mean, Kaczynski is basically a well-meaning charlatan. You know what I mean? And so I think what he was doing is he was in fact improving the efficiency of these engines. Nothing to do with Kaczynski, but the Traveler was bonding somehow with the engines of these ships and doing kind of nuanced calibrations in a very different way than just punching code or whatever. He's just completely immersed. He's almost becoming the ship itself, and that is, I think, what is happening is that Wesley puts in these new equations in that one scene and kind of optimizes the warp field in this new way, and the Traveler doesn't correct that. He may not even understand how that works the way Wesley does in a technical way. So now he's like doing his thing, but it goes wrong because he let Wesley punch these equations in, and now all of a sudden, like, so what? In other words, what happened is, since the Traveler's a lens, Wesley put in this theory. He just put in this idea, and now this idea came to fruition, and the Enterprise went through these like insane velocities.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that's what happened with Kaczynski. Okay, now I sort of understand once you said the lens thing.
Right, he's a lens, is what he describes himself
For
as.
other people. Okay.
And then the second question was, remind me.
I had a second question.
Yeah, it was. The second question had to do. I think you said.
Oh, the second question was Doctor Who.
Anyway,
let me take a moment to say one of the things I really liked about the episode was the directing. The director's I think is Rob Bowman, who directed Reign of Fire, that dragon movie with Christian Bale and Matthew McConaughey.
Also a veteran X-Files director.
And a veteran
I think the X-Files movie was directed by him.
Correct, the first one, right?
Yeah, the good one.
Absolutely. And the scene where the Traveler is in sickbay, where it's very dark, right? But the lighting, like the Traveler's lit very well, Picard and Crusher are, and then everything else is extremely dark, which is weird when you think about it. It's kind of stylized because I don't think you normally would have sickbay completely in the dark like that. But I think it was an interesting stylistic choice because it just made this beautiful shaft of light emphasizing the Traveler and kind of gave a more otherworldly look in that scene. And
yeah,
and then the scenes with the dream, the people having their visions. That guy who was, you mentioned before, Selva, he was eating by himself and he was imagining this concerto going on about him. I think in later seasons, maybe if this episode had happened in a later season, maybe they would have given that scene to one of the regulars. Maybe we would have seen something from Geordi or something. But this episode went ahead and showed us somebody whom we will never see again. And I thought it was kind of cool, the ballerina. Like, it gave scope to the ship. It's not just the same 7 people, the same, Riker, Crusher, all these people. But they kind of moments. Right, yeah. So I like that. I credit Bowman with that. So
also the scene with Picard and his Maman. How do you say that again? Maman? Momo. Was also very beautifully shot as well.
It was, yes. The lighting was really nice, and there was, I think there was they used a special lens on her, I guess, right?
No, she was backlit beautifully.
Oh, she was backlit. That's what.
There's that interesting, like, again, there's this like kind of like a different, like, you could tell the hallway's not being lit by the hallway lights. It's like a light that's coming from some other place, and it kind of gives it that idea of that she is coming back from the dead. Like, visually, you understand she's a ghost, as well as like the dialogue that supports it. So
yeah, and then one thing I also want to mention is the very end of the episode when Wesley gets his commission as acting ensign.
Oh, well, that's right. We didn't touch on that. That's right. So this is Picard's way of following the Traveler's advice, is that he gives Wesley a commission.
Well, I almost feel like that was the point of the episode. I feel, just looking at it from a production standpoint, and I haven't read about this, so I don't know if this is the case, but I feel like they were, Will Wheaton probably was the biggest star as they started out. It was either him or LeVar Burton. And they were really struggling, I think, for ways to get him into the stories. And the only way to do that is by making him, an active member of the crew somehow. And to me, it felt like this episode was really just an excuse to do that, because early on you think there's no way this Picard guy is ever going to come around to Wesley to the point of he goes in. Wasn't it just one episode ago he let him on the bridge for the first time?
It was a couple of episodes ago, yeah.
Or two episodes. Yeah, and he let him on in the pilot, and then there was another one later where
it was the
Crusher
episode
had to ask permission.
Right, it was the episode where it was the lieutenant. No, not lieutenant. Was it? Yeah, it was lieutenant episode.
I think it was. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, so it just feels like they decided, we're gonna have this kind of godlike alien come on here and tell Picard that he needs to make Wesley a member of the crew just to get him in more shows and have him sitting at the helm every episode, and that's my take on it.
You're absolutely right. From that standpoint, this is a very important episode because it does put Wesley as a part of the crew now. He's now a member of the crew, acting ensign, and his story will be intimately tied with the crew. And with the Traveler. Yeah, it's true.
How many other episodes does the Traveler appear in? Just
one other episode that'll come much later in
season 7. You know what? I almost want to say that it's as many episodes from the season finale maybe as this is from the season premiere. It might actually be that.
Really? Wow.
But yeah, it's season 7, episode 20, I believe.
Wow.
Journey's End.
Oh my gosh. Do both of you think that Wesley fulfilled his based on this episode, did he fulfill the promise of the character in terms of this implied greatness that the Traveler says he has and all that stuff?
Well, your immediate thought is that Wesley's going to design some kind of new form of propulsion system, or the immediate thought I had when I was a kid watching this was that maybe Wesley was going to invent a new kind of warp drive, or do something that allows them to go these extraordinary distances and come back home. So ludicrous speed or something like that. So from that standpoint, I don't think Wesley does fulfill this. But the Traveler also suggests that whatever his destiny is, it shouldn't be interfered with necessarily. And that Captain Picard should just encourage him. And he doesn't really give a specific destiny for Wesley. He's just saying this guy's like a Mozart, in terms of the show, until that episode, I don't think he really does anything extraordinary. That episode, I guess we don't mind spoilers on here, but later in season 7, doesn't Wesley phase out as well, just like the Traveler?
Wesley becomes another Traveler. Yeah, that's his ultimate fate. And yeah, so in the show, in the context of Starfleet, I don't really think we see Wesley do anything that amazing or grand. I'm not even sure he makes it out of Starfleet Academy. They make a point of a lot of the Wesley episodes sort of showing him being like a normal dude, and his problems with falling in love or peer pressure or not getting good grades, or I think he even fails his Starfleet entrance exam once or twice. So yeah, I guess his ultimate destiny, or the greatness that the Traveler was speaking of, was him becoming another Traveler.
He just needed Wesley to come of age to join him on his journeys. So it was
Are we going to get into another Nambla talk now?
Well, I liken it to Padme meeting Anakin for the first time. He's too young for her.
Are you an angel? I heard the Deep Space pilots talk about them.
He's too young.
Wait a minute. Wesley is who are we comparing Wesley to? Padme?
Annie, you've grown.
The Traveler.
You'll always be that little boy I knew on Tatooine.
Oh my lord.
So the Traveler is Padme and Wesley is Anakin. The Traveler, it is suggested there's a very intimate relationship between the Traveler and Wesley. So it's very possible that later in that Journey's End episode, Wesley now starts traveling and he's now on the same plane as the Traveler, and now they can have their romantic music.
Yes, and have their twins.
And Will Wheaton, if you're listening to this, we would love your input.
Yes. Also, Dennis Matalone, the fire scene guy, he's welcome
Yes,
to come join us anytime. That guy.
please.
I apologize for what I said about your acting. It was awful, but please come on and join us and talk about your singing, which is great.
Excellent. So, getting back
Wesley
to
did return for Nemesis, though, right?
what's that?
Wesley was in Nemesis.
That's a really confusing thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was. But he doesn't say anything. He's just kind of there. He's in the shot, and
do people
I don't
see
think
him?
he has any lines, does he?
Do the others see him? Is he
I think he says congratulations to Commander.
okay? Maybe he's just there in in traveler form, and no one else sees him. I don't know.
Well, if he if he does have the same abilities as the Traveler, it's safe to say that Wesley can come in and out as he chooses.
I will say this. Let me add this. There's a novel, and I know the Star Trek novels are of questionable canon at times. There's a Next Generation novel that's set right before Nemesis that has Wesley. There's two actually that has Wesley coming back, kind of giving more insight into what he's been doing, and but it still just doesn't explain what the hell his destiny was.
So what was he doing? He was just exploring the universe and getting into wacky adventures?
Right. He actually the two novels set him up as a traveler, as you said, and then he takes on an apprentice traveler, just as the original traveler picked up on Wesley. So he continues traveling with someone else.
Is the Apprentice Traveler male or female?
You stole my question. And how hot?
I don't remember. Actually, to be honest, I don't know.
So this is a good follow-up for next. We'll follow up on this on the next.
Yeah, I haven't read that novel, so I don't know.
I'd also be curious to find out if Will has read them when he comes on. We'll have to ask him about that.
Yes.
Yeah, so anyways, really really good episode. I remember as a kid being really kind of empowered or inspired, and maybe I think I possibly studied a little harder that semester.
Wow.
No TV show inspired me that much.
Yeah, likewise, yeah, ditto.
But Star Trek definitely did turn me on to science and physics, and while I didn't pursue that myself, I've always been an amateur, sort of physics enthusiast, if you will. And so I think episodes like this are what inspired me, because there are a lot of interesting theories and kind of the theme that thought has mass, or that thought is what helps reality be what it is something that's being explored and has been explored for a long time, both philosophically and scientifically. And there are many people that think that the universe in some way responds to thought. And I mean, even the Force is like a kind of a suggestion of this, and so the Traveler describes something similar to this, and it's something that's come up over and over and over in our mystical teachings, in our philosophical teachings. So, who knows where we'll go with this, but certainly we do see it in action in some ways, whereas, humans seem to have the ability to bring thought into reality. Humans think of things like communicators, and we end up having, cell phones later on, and these are all things that once were an idea or a thought, and now they're real and tangible. So
That's a good point.
What's that?
That is a very good point.
It's not instantaneous like in this episode, but it certainly is an application of that idea. So cool to explore. Any other thoughts on the episode?
I'm just excited for Wesley to be a part of the crew finally, and to get to see him to do more things and try on more sweaters, and I'm just trying to enjoy sweater time while it lasts, because I know we're going to get to that gray jumpsuit soon enough. Got to savor each one now, guys.
It's true. Doctor?
Troy is useless. I mean, seriously.
Oh my goodness.
Well, next week is a big Troy episode, actually. So
what is next week's? What is next week's?
Next week is Lonely Among Us.
And what happens in that one?
It's awful. I went ahead and actually watched it already. But yeah, there's all kinds of crazy aliens. There's a entity that's body jumping and taking over people, and it takes over Picard at one point. Anyway, we won't spoil next week's show, but Troy plays a big role in sensing things, and telling people what she's sensing. So get ready.
I can't wait. I really can't wait. I honestly don't remember that one. But this episode that we saw has always been one of my favorites of this season, and in part because the Traveler I thought was a very enigmatic character. It reminded me of again, going back to Doctor Who. There's an episode called Warrior's Gate where they have these lion creatures, these lion men that are enslaved in order to help basically warp ships through space. And
they're warp lions.
They're warp lions, exactly. And the Traveler reminded me of that. And Warrior's Gate was done years before this one. So it always reminded me of that. And again, I think this was actually a turning point for Picard, because I think the fact that he finally, that scene at the end when he gives Wesley the
mission
and makes him an ensign. That exchange between him and Riker, where he's like, oh well, what can we do? It shows a humanity that I don't think we had seen up until that point. And
it's the first time we see him being playful.
Right, exactly. And I don't think we can when he's encountered his grandmother, I think that I interpret that as being an influence on maybe humanizing him a little. And then that plus the fact that the Traveler tells him that,
there is a degree of comfort that comes from knowing that your consciousness will somehow continue beyond your physical form, right? And that's really the suggestion of that scene, where his grandmother's consciousness is very well intact. She's interacting with him in a way that's not, like a ghost, not like a traditional ghost,
Well, hold on. Is that what's happening there, or is that Picard's own memories of her creating her in that form?
Again, the Traveler suggests that it's not just his thoughts, that his thoughts have now become a reality in some way, and even his grandmother suggests the same thing, where she's like, I thought you were dead. He says something like, I thought you were dead, and she says something to the effect of, well, I am, but I'm not.
Well, she says that I've always been with you, or something.
I've always been with you. Yeah, that's right.
And I interpreted that as meaning that, I mean, certain people are a little, I don't know if I want to say superstitious, but they feel, like if a parent dies or a grandparent, as they get older, they'll say, I feel like in moments of great stress or whatever, they're with me, they bring me comfort, in a spiritual sense. And I kind of interpreted that as Picard having a spiritual moment actually made real through that, being in that universe. And, whatever influence that grandmother had on him, which I think that small scene indicates that, she had enormous influence on him at a young age. And then the fact that the Traveler tells him what he says about Wesley kind of makes Picard think, maybe I can be this for Wesley. And, maybe eases some of the guilt that Picard clearly, or at least awkward feelings that he has about, the issues with having, the mission with Wesley's father, and he brought Wesley's father's home, after he died, and that whole awkwardness that he feels with that family.
That's a really good point. I didn't make that connection between Picard scene with her and then him with Wesley later.
Yeah, that's a great analysis. I agree with that. That's excellent.
You would have done a good job in Cardassian film school over here.
Thank you.
Want to come give a lecture, just let me know.
I'll consider it. Thank you.
Well,
are we over time, Starfleet Command?
I mean, there's no time limit to our casual and informal discussions, but I think we've covered this episode pretty well. I think that I'm happy to say, live long and prosper, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Well,
live long and prosper, everyone.
Long and prosper.
Signing out.